everyone. This is Jewish Talk coming to you from Nassau Community College on 90.3 WHPC. Also streaming on the iHeart and the iTunes app. This program is later archived on Spreaker.com. So hi there, my name is Rabbi Perl. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This all depends on when you are listening and, of course, watching as well, as we are now live on Facebook Live, both at WHPC and under my name, Anshul Perl. Why don't you tune in there? You can post your comments. I'll be happy to recognize you. So hello to the radio, hello to the online, and hello to the world. I want to first start off today by saying Mazel Tov. This past week, on Thursday evening, I had the great honor to be part of a celebration right here at the WHPC studios as this great station celebrates its 50 years. Can you imagine 50 years providing an amazing, high-quality opportunity for young men and women to learn how to speak on the radio and to take up positions of communication? So I'd like to say Mazel Tov to everybody at the station and continued success. It was an amazing gathering, all kinds of people from all walks of life, celebrities and who knows what, and former students, and really, it was really uplifting. So to Kim, my engineer, and to Sean, the station manager, to everybody out there, we say congratulations. Thank you for amazing, amazing good work and the opportunity given to us. And talk about all the community volunteers who come, who have the opportunity each week to share ideas of all kinds of ideas and backgrounds. So, again, with appreciation to the station, let's get right into our subject for today. And if I was just asked, what is the theme, the general overview of, how could you put into words what your program is? And I think it's just two words, really, dirty words. Just hang in there. First of all, I'd like to share with you what I would call the genesis of recovery. One of the loveliest stories told by the Hasidic master, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, goes like this. A king was informed by his chief minister there had been a blight on the crops that year. They were affected so greatly that anyone eating the grain would become meshuggah, would become insane. But, said the minister, there's no need for us to worry. I have set aside enough grain from last year's harvest for both of us that will last until the harvest of the following year. The king shook his head and said, No, I will not allow myself any privileges other than those shared by my subjects. We shall eat of the same grain, the king continued, and we shall both go insane together with the rest of the population. But here's what we shall do. You and I will mark our foreheads with an indelible imprint, so that when we go insane, I will look at you, and you will look at me, and we will know that we are insane. A nice story, right? Some time ago, I encountered a woman. She was particularly kind and compassionate, but I noticed that she never smiled. A steady paleness and gloom seemed to settle across her face all the time. When I asked her about it, she related to me that when she was 3, her father had become an alcoholic. He would come home every evening drunk and knock her head against the brick wall in the kitchen. Her mother would stand nearby silently, covering her eyes with her hands. When the dad would conclude with the beating, the woman related to me, Mom would tell him, do you have to do it so hard? See, recovery is a miracle. In the face of severe physical or mental abuse, for a person to rehabilitate themselves and reclaim their lost innocence and zest for life is nothing short of a miracle. The ability for us to perform this miracle in our lives, I'm here to share with you, was actually sewn into the fabric of our existence as the result of the flood that was described in the Torah portion of yesterday in the story of Noah. According to the Jewish tradition, in the year 1656 after creation, that would be 2105 BCE, there was a big flood. As you may know, God says to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence. I'm going to destroy them. Thereafter, there was a 40-day long titanic shower descending upon the earth and flooded the earth, came from the heavens and flooded the earth, putting an end to all of its inhabitants. So growing up in yeshiva and learning the story each year, I could never comprehend why God could actually wipe out an entire world because of its wrongdoings. Even God himself apparently came to the same conclusion after the flood. What do we read afterwards? Torah relates how following the flood, God made a vow, I will never again curse the earth because of man, neither will I again smite everything living as I've done. All the days of the earth, the seasons for the seed and the time and the harvest shall never cease. So what happened? What changed? Also, why, from all the ways to destroy civilization, did God choose the flood? So I want to share with you that the Lubavitcher Rebbe explained the tragic tale of the flood in this following fashion. The world ought to be spiritual and a godly place, and man ought to be spiritual, a sacred creature. But in their ultimate purpose and destiny, that's what it is. That's what is like kind of the plan, the destiny. Again, the world should be spiritual, a godly place, and man should be spiritual. But during the millennium preceding the flood, the human race defined itself exclusively more as a beastly and a criminal race. Man corrupted himself and his environment so severely that healing was no longer possible. The world turned into an unredeemable hell. Destruction was inevitable, a natural consequence of 10 centuries flooded with abuse and evil. Now, is this not the tragic consequence of all addiction? Think about this. After decades of frying your brain day after day with alcohol, drugs, or other destructive substances or behaviors, you finally manage to kill the last vestige of your soul and your rationality. At this point, healing is not possible anymore. Your mind loses its last ounce of control over your life, and you just watch yourself wither away and die. So during the time of Noah, man and the world did not yet possess the potential for rehabilitation and self-renewal. Why? Because the spirituality and the holiness accessible to the world during the pre-flood era was a gift from above and not really intrinsic to the very chemistry of humanity. Like a student, think about this, who grasps all the profound teachings of his mentor, but lacks the ability to conceive an original thought. Man was at that point a recipient of the light, but did not own the light. Therefore, as long as man was a loyal pupil of God, he remained connected to the source of life. Once man rejected God, his existence became valueless and purposeless. So the rains of the flood, described in Kabbalah as a cosmic mikvah, did not only destroy an unsalvageable world, it also cleansed it, and purified it, leaving in its wake a new world with a new nature. The mighty waters that were emitted from heaven, in a sense, impregnated the truths of spirituality and godliness into the very fabric of the earth. So like a pupil who has been trained by his mentor to think on his own, humanity in the post-flood era absorbed the goodness and harmony of its creator within its very structure. So from now on, even if man would alienate himself entirely from his divine source, he could always recreate himself through the light engraved in the depth of his being. I'm sure you're aware that in our tradition, we're taught that when a baby is in her mother's womb, studies the entire Torah, everything. During the 9 months, a baby is learning. I'm not talking about anybody just particularly only Jewish. Everyone studies and has a tremendous spiritual bond that is taught to the child. And when the person wakes, when the baby is born, it gets a shot under the nose called the philtrum, and all that information, all that knowledge, and all that holiness is pushed into the subconscious of that child. So again, built in, post the flood, and points forward, there was a change within the human being themselves. In a sense, the flood granted our world the gift and the miracle of recovery. Even in the face of the most horrific abuse, we retain within ourselves a sacred space, an untouchable innocence from which we can always experience the wonder of rebirth. Though insanity, in all of its forms, may pervade our lives, our souls, our neshamas preserve a memory of a sane world, a world filled with innocence, love, and inner security. I want to say good morning to Linda Zellickson, to Jean Marie, and Eitan Kelshevsky, and everybody out there. Thank you so much for joining us, and make a post, say hello. We'll let everybody know. If you want to let us know where you're listening, that'll be fantastic. So it would seem that Noah, let's move on to another aspect. The idea of who was the first Jewish person in terms of the Bible, what the Torah tells us. It would seem that Noah is the ideal forefather for the Jewish person, the man who, like Noah, will always be alone amongst the nations, whose lives 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 based on his own inspired standards and not based on popular trends. But no, Noah is clearly not Jewish. As a matter of fact, all Gentiles are called in the Torah as the children of Noah, B'nai Noach. Only Abraham, who was born 10 generations later, he is considered the first Jewish person. Good morning to Jonathan Wolf. Welcome back. So our question is, why is that? Think about this. Noah is a hard man to understand. On the one hand, he's paid the highest compliments and is the only man that the Torah itself explicitly coins as a tzaddik, a perfect in his time. He saved civilization, and every human being alive is one of his descendants. Notwithstanding the ridicule of his neighbors and acquaintances, he trusts God implicitly and single-handedly builds an enormous ark that takes him 120 years. He is a lonely man of faith who rejects world opinion and peer pressure and retains his integrity despite living in the most morally depraved generation in the history of humanity. So, the defining difference, though, between Abraham and Noah is not found in their own levels of faith and piety. Rather, it is found in how much of that piety they influenced upon others. The hallmark of a person is not only that he believes, but that she inspires others as well. It's not only that the person is good, but that he infuses his surroundings with goodness. And with that's where Noah failed. One morning, Brezhnev, who was the Soviet communist leader at the time, looked out of the Kremlin window and saw the sun. "Sun," he said. Let's go to what? S-U-N. "Who is the best man in all the world?" You are, said the sun. At noon, Brezhnev again looks out of the Kremlin window, sees the sun, and asks, "Who is the best man in all of the world?" You are, says the sun. At sunset, Brezhnev again looks out of the Kremlin window, saw the sun, and asked again, "Who is the best man in all of the world?" "Well, it sure isn't you," said the sun. "You see, I'm in the west now, and you can't catch me." So, in the shadow of the drama of the Great Flood, moving on now, lies a mysterious and often overlooked story. I'm going to now share with you a fascinating details of what actually happened following this major flood. It's the story of the Tower of Babel. The story, in short, is no more than 9 verses, but it is of great importance because it is the root of one of the most enduring conversations of mankind in determining the nature of government. This story goes like this. There's a group of people who settle in a valley in the land of Shinar. This is in ancient Babylonia, which today is the modern-day Iraq, in a large valley between the Tigris and the Euphrates River. The Torah tells us that at that time, all people spoke only one language. In great companionship, they embarked upon the most daring building project ever attempted. What was their plan? They were there to build a city with a tower that will reach heaven and have all of humanity live in this city, to settle there. Torah goes on to tell us God is not happy about this project and confuses their languages, giving each their own unique language and effectively foiling any cooperation. This led to infighting and chaos. Soon they abandoned the project and are spread all over the planet, each forming its own civilization, culture, and with its own language. Now, this story has long intrigued scholars and historians alike who have ever gone so far to attempt even to locate its location in Iraq. What exactly was their crime? Why was God upset with the idea of homogeneous, unified civilization? So the Torah itself, although it tells us that the builders were dispersed, does not tell us what became of the tower. But the Talmud, authored in Babylonia in the 5th century, in the same region where the tower was built, tells us about the fate of the gigantic tower that they built. In the words of the Talmud, quickly, Dr. Kilshevsky, Sanhedrin, the Talmud Sanhedrin, page 109 on the first side, tells us the following. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Migdal Shlish, Shlish Nisrav, Shlish Nivla, and Shlish Kayam. Rabbi Yochanan tells us that the tower, that the top third of the tower was burnt, finished. The lowest third, was submerged into the ground, kind of sunk into the ground. But the third remained intact. This is what the Talmud tells us of this tower. The Medrash is more specific and tells us this tower which they built, 1/3 of it was burnt, 1/3 sunk into the ground, and 1/3 of it still remains in existence. Lest you think, says the Medrash, that what was remaining was very small. Rabbi Huna tells us that if you were to ascend to the top of this remaining tower and look down, the palm trees looked like grasshoppers. Hesta Maisa. I want to say hello to Barry, a real scholar. Thank you. What happened, Barry? Good morning. So it was so tall that if you were up there looking down, the palm trees looked like grasshoppers. So it is fascinating to note that at the end of the 19th century, in the beginning of the 20th century, large excavations were performed in the area of ancient Babylonia, in the territory between the Tigris and the Euphrates River in Iraq. The city of Ur, which is the birthplace of Abraham, who was 48 years old when the tower was built, was uncovered. Archaeologists have discovered a very tall tower, which may have been the remnant of the Tower of Babel discussed in the Talmud and the Medrash. But what we'd like to focus on here, what is the significance of the fact that 1/3 of the tower burnt, 1/3 was buried, and 1/3 remained intact? Why did it happen that way? And why do the sages make a point of telling us this narrative? How did they even know this when the Torah does not state it? Perhaps there's a far deeper message here. And the Medrash provides 3 explanations for the sin of the Tower of Babel. What was going on over there? The first is the purpose of the tower was to defeat God. The people built a tower upon which they would ascend to the heavens and once and for all lay God to eternal rest. That's one opinion. A second explanation of why they built this tower, it was that the purpose of the tower was to create a totalitarian, homogeneous society with a single culture, a uniform vocabulary, and an identical way of thinking, and an equal distribution of wealth. Doesn't that sound familiar? The Torah begins the narrative that the earth was of one language and uniform words. And the Medrash explains, this is their thinking. What is in this person's hand belongs also to the other person's hand. And what is in the other's hand belongs to him as well. Dear friends, what we read here was the first attempt for a socialist society. Then came the third opinion. A third opinion in Medrash is that the tower was a defense against a future flood. The people felt that every so often the sky would begin to fall, causing tremendous flooding. So the tower was intended to support the sky so that it would not collapse again in the future. Their uniform words represented a uniform plan to protect themselves against nature's dangers. Now we will understand the depth of the words of the sages about what happened to the three parts of the tower. The rabbis were addressing not only the physical properties of the tower, but also three ideas which fueled it. One of these ideas was completely burnt and destroyed. Another one of these ideas was buried, but not destroyed. Every so often, it rears its head. And finally, the third idea, motivating the tower, stands tall and proud to this very day. Let me explain. The first motivation behind the tower, to fight the Almighty, viewed the Creator as some sort of a pagan creature who can be appeased through human sacrifices and all kinds of gifts. So in their ancient, primitive pagan minds, basically God was another bully that can be battled with and annihilate. Well, this perspective has been burnt. Whether one calls themselves a believer or an agnostic, whether one loves God or has issues with Him, no one feels that they can actually build a tower to assassinate the divine. Therefore, that third of the tower has been burnt. It was deleted from society. You may recall the anecdote about a Jewish secular father who sends his boy to a Christian prep school. The first day his son returns home and tells his father that he learned about a new concept, the Trinity, to which the father responds, "There is only one God, and we don't believe in Him." It is clear today that whether you believe or not, we are dealing with a transcendental God, transcending space, time, matter, beyond human properties, who cannot be killed through warfare. Shoin. So that's reflected in the third of the tower that was burnt. Gone. Finish. Forget about it. Fertig. The second idea behind the tower, to create this homogeneous society, has been submerged in the earth. But every so often it pops up. From Alexander the Great and the Roman Empire to Karl Marx socialism, the Soviet Union, and all other kinds of places, even some professors and activities in the United States of our times, many attempts have been made to silence the differences between people, both in thought and in wealth. Even though the idea sounds beautiful and seems like the answer to conflict, it has failed time and time again, and has produced far more disasters and bloodshed than good, because it defies the human nature and it destroys human creativity. Winston Churchill said, "Capitalism is the unequal distribution of wealth. Communism is the equal distribution of misery." We can never create enduring unity by denying diversity. My friends, listen very carefully, because this deals with the problems that we're facing today in the woke world. We can never create ensuring unity by denying diversity. Diversity is sewn into the fabric of existence. Just as no two faces are alike, no two minds are alike, says the Mishnah. The Tower of Babel, according to this interpretation, was not designated or designed to rival God's existence, but it was to rival God's undefined reality, which expresses itself in the endless diversity of existence. The very radical, undefined unity of God is what gives birth to the endless diversity of creation. They wish to build a totalitarian tribal civilization dedicated to the principles of nationalistic homogeneity. The people had to be one in all ways. This is the essence of a fascist uniformity. God introduced a multiplicity of language, not to punish humanity or humankind, but to fashion a world of individual diversity rather than sameness. We celebrate the 390,000 different kinds of plants, the 10,000 species of birds, the 60,000 species of trees, and the 5.5 million species of insects, and the 7,000 species of mammals, 34,000 species of fish, which include gefilte fish, and 6,500 languages spoken. Kim has really got a laugh out of that one. Each and every one of them make a world a diverse and beautiful place. The miracle of creation is that unity in heaven creates diversity on earth. There are many things which unite us: our single creator, shared human aspirations, needs, and feelings. We're all moved by a beautiful sunset, the smile of a child. But there's also much which divides us. And I emphasize this, my friends. And that which divides us is as divine as that which unites us. Should I repeat that again? And that which divides us is as divine as that which unites us. People are not the same, and they're not supposed to be the same. Remember Esperanto? I know that Barry and Iris Scott Gross, they speak this perfectly. I'm not sure about Lavana Lichter, but these wonderful individuals, they know what Esperanto is. This was to be the universal language of humanity and was meant to unite the world through one language. No more Spanish, French, Russian, English, Hebrew, Bulgarian. Everyone was to speak one language, Esperanto. It was created by an idealistic universal Jew. His name was Eliezer Ludwig Zamenhof, from Bialystok, no less. He felt that Esperanto would cure anti-Semitism, as everybody would begin to understand, everyone would have the same language. Ironically, all his 3 children were murdered in the Holocaust. So much for that. He translated the Torah into Esperanto, and as of 1975, Esperanto was taught in 600 schools to 20,000 students per year. There were about 100 journals and 7,500 books written Esperanto, including translations from 65 languages. My friends, as Barry always tells me, it didn't do the trick. It is all but forgotten. It's all forgotten. People want their culture, their heritage, and their language. So garnished. The only thing that remains from this individual is a street in Tel Aviv named Eliezer Zamenhof Street. Shoin. This aspect of the tower, the belief that we can destroy diversity and create superficial oneness, has been buried in the earth. But every so often, like something buried, a person or a movement comes and tries to revitalize it, to breathe a new life into a buried specimen and failed philosophy. Let's move on to the third philosophy. Right? We going back to the building. 1/3 was burnt. The idea went out. Forget about it. The bottom one was buried in the ground, but rears its ugly head, as we see even in our times, from time to time. Now let's look at what remained above the ground. 1/3 remained standing. The third philosophy behind the Tower of Babel still exists in full sight. This is the idea that we can build a tower to prevent another flood. Consider this. Noah stood at the front of the ark for 120 years, warning that God was going to bring the flood. Noah was mocked. Michigan. Finally, the flood. Oh, by the way, I have to add that, they spoke Yiddish in those days. So finally the flood came. Any thinking person should have concluded that there's a creator who runs the world and expects people to behave in a moral, kind way. We are responsible to God and to the universe. Yet the people, the grandchildren of Noah, chose to blindly believe that the flood was merely a natural disaster. And if it is only a fluke of nature, there is no lesson to be learned from it. So it happens. On the contrary, we can correct the problem not by improving ourselves, but by properly constructing a support tower to prevent the sky from collapsing. That third philosophy, sadly, dear friends, still exists. That the laws of nature are random mistakes, and there's no consciousness behind them. This part of the tower still exists in full sight. We too, like the generation of the tower, often denying ourselves the opportunity of seeing the inner heartbeat of life, the rhythm behind the scientific laws, the music vibrating through the laws of nature and the symmetry of physics. By taking the miracles around us and merely sending them into a science lab to be dissected as formulas, we make our lives and our world shallower and emptier. It also creates hubris and dulls our sensitivity, of course, to moral responsibility. The fallacy exists to such an extent. What did we say earlier on? I mentioned that it was so tall, this tower, that if you stood on the top, the palm trees looked as if they were grasshoppers. What does that mean? The fallacy that we're talking about now is just felt to such an extent that one who ascended the tower sees palm trees as if they are grasshoppers. The miracle can be so great that it towers over the landscape like a palm tree. It's really a miracle. And what happens? Along comes the naysayers, and they minimize it. They minimize it into the size of a grasshopper. It was just nature, just happenstance, it's just random, not realizing that the coincidence, what we attribute and call coincidence, is just God's way of choosing to remain anonymous. Talk about what's happened in our recent time with COVID and everything else. We can easily explain it away. Well, this thing and that thing, and science that. But at the end of the day, there is a much bigger message that came that we could all take from what happened in the last couple of years. So you see, science and technology are great blessings, but we must never forget they are tools. Innovations in physics do not guide us to become better people and to create a more decent world. Towers we must build, not to defend heaven or to replace heaven, but to create a fragment of heaven on planet Earth. You can believe that the world is the result of a random Big Bang and was just one big cosmic mistake, or you can believe that every blade of grass has been placed there by Hashem, by God, and has a unique purpose to fulfill. You can choose to believe that you are stuck in your job because when you were a foolish sophomore in college, you randomly chose a course. Or you can say that there is a unique mission for you that you can accomplish in your workplace with your honesty, with your work ethic, and influence that on your co-workers. You can choose to believe that you were married to your spouse because when you were naive, you fell in love and had no idea about real life. Or you can believe that your spouse completes your soul, and together you can overcome any obstacles and build a beautiful family. You can choose to believe that your personality is the natural result of your childhood, your parents, your gene pool, and your horoscope. You can believe that there is no such thing as free choice, and all the decisions are predetermined by blind, random faith. Or, my friends, you can choose to believe that there is a trace of God inside of every one of us, a soul and a neshama that is uncorrectable, unstoppable, and capable of true greatness. You can live in the Tower of Babel, or you can cleanse the doors of perception and live in the bosom of an infinite possibilities. With this in mind, I now continue on with the Kanye West and the power of words. Again, I want to welcome everybody who's joined us. Ira Scott Gross, good morning to you. Thank you so much. And many others who are listening, thank you on the radio, on the Facebooks. Here we go. We all know what I'm talking about with Kanye West. Kanye West was once the biggest hip-hop artist on the world, with over 160 million records sold and 24 Grammy Awards. But West has been headlining the news recently with his blatant anti-Semitism. His string of anti-Semitic comments is not the first for this mega influential artist. Back in November of 2013, he stated in a radio interview, "Black people don't have the same of connections as Jewish people. We ain't Jewish. We don't get family that got money like that." No. West has taken his Jew hatred to another level of vitriol. He suggested in an Instagram post that rapper Diddy is controlled by Jews. Do I have to go into everybody knows? The next day, after being criticized for the post, he tweeted, "I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake, I'm gonna," and you know what he said about DEath Con. The funny thing is that, and he goes on to this whole rap, whatever it is over there. Several influential celebrities have been outspoken against West's anti-Semitism, including David Schwimmer, Amy Schumer, Reese Witherspoon, Kim Kardashian, Paltrow, Katie Couric, Kendall, and Kylie Jenner. I mean, Maria Shriver, all members of my synagogue. Each of these celebrities, I don't think they know they're members of my synagogues, but they're honorary members of our synagogue. Each of them, which includes you, Kim, as well. You're ordinary anytime you want to come. Each of these celebrities and many others like them should be congratulated and praised for speaking out against this hatred. Too often, anti-Semitism takes a back seat to other acts of racism. Those who have gone out of their way to condemn the hatred of Jews really should be thanked. Additionally, a number of companies have cut ties with West, including Vogue, now Adidas. These decisions have real financial consequences. And with Adidas acknowledging that its decision to sever ties with West would have a financial impact of at least $250 million in this year, 2022. So we should praise these companies that took real action up against anti-Semitism. Some may wonder, though, certainly Kane's comments are deplorable, but aren't we overreaching? He hasn't committed any acts of violence or caused damage to anyone personally. He said some hurtful words. Is that such a big deal? The truth is that the words, especially those of influential people, can have a far-reaching impact. In response to West's hatred, Jamie Lee Curtis powerfully posted, "Words matter. A threat to the Jewish people ended once in genocide. Your words hurt and incite violence. Hateful words can give permission and encouragement to others to spread their hatred." Immediately after West's comments, a group of neo-Nazis placed banners on the 405 highway in Los Angeles and said some terrible things. Economist David Drott found that approximately 10% of the participation in the Rwandan genocide could be attributed to radio broadcasts, corresponding to an estimated 50,000 murderers. Hateful words can lead to devastating consequences. It's not only influential people whose words can make an impact. Every person has the potential to use their words to hurt or uplift other people. Bullying has become a major problem in schools and online. Studies have shown that those who are bullied are at an increased risk of mental health problems and long-term damage to self-esteem. Children and adolescents who are bullies themselves are at increased risk of drug use, academic problems, and violence to others later in life. Words of encouragement from a parent, teacher, a coach, a colleague, a friend can instill confidence that lasts a lifetime. Giving a compliment to a coworker positively impacts their emotional state that affects their interactions, creating a ripple effect of positivity. So, continue this idea. Good morning to Randy Greenberg, Boker Tov. Unbelievable, Randy. Thank you so much. I want to propose that time has come for us to take responsibility and try to have clean speech. Clean speech. We all fall prey to using our speech negatively, whether it is in gossip or unintended hurtful words. Our words have less than ideal consequences. Like the celebrities and companies who have stood up against anti-Semitism, we too need to take a stance against negative speech in our own lives. It's not easy, but by spending a little time each day focusing on our words, we can actually turn our hurtful speech into clean speech. A great way, there's all kinds of projects I'm reading about today. Good morning to Peter Hershon, and welcome back to Laura. There's a whole campaign out there in the month of November where videos are being shared with practical ideas and tips to elevate our speech, all based on Jewish wisdom. So now is your chance to take a stand. Let us try to improve the way we speak and create a ripple effect of positivity that will influence our families, our friends, and our community. Now, just curious, someone asked me, what is the Jewish stance on cursing and curse words? Right? We're always warned on the radio, be careful what you say, no inappropriate words. Well, I've heard the line that our bodies are a temple, and that defaming God's name is very bad. But what about a little curse here and there? When you really get mad, what do you think, dear friends? Well, think of someone wise, kind, and caring. The type of man or woman you deeply respect and look up to as a role model. Can you imagine such a person spewing out filthy language in a sudden moment of rage? Probably not. In my experience, I find that people on their own, or something goes wrong or something, the first word that comes out of them is like, excuse me, the bathroom is down the hallway. And for good reason. It's not just a holy thing to do, it's to have good speech. In the beginning, to have dirty words and to have that, there's an expression, was often lung is often sung. If a person says any filthy word, means their mind, their heart, and their lungs, so to speak, is filled with this inappropriate stuff. In the beginning of the Torah portion of Kedoshim, we read an enigmatic instruction, Kedoshim to you, be holy. There's a difference from, this is different from the many other commandments that follow, which pertain to specific matters such as marital and ritual purity or holiness. The sages explained that the Hebrew word kadosh, which is normally translated as holy, actually means to be distinct, separate. Therefore, these words are actually a commandment to separate ourselves. Separate from what? Guess what? From vulgar language, for one. To paraphrase Maimonides, while the Torah forbids various behaviors and foods, at the same time, it does permit intimacy between husband and wife, and the consumption of kosher meat and wine. Therefore, there can be a glutton who eats only kosher food, a drunkard who drinks only kosher wine, and a married man whose behavior with his wife is lewd, even though she's permissible, and they can live together. Or there may be a person who speaks in a disgusting manner, something that is not specifically prohibited in the Torah. Therefore, it is possible for a person to actually be, in the classic words of Maimonides, disgusting with the permission of the Torah. In other words, Torah itself demands that we go beyond the parameters it sets for you and live a life that is truly distinguished and uplifted. The Torah says to us, be holy. It's not enough to do this and don't do that. There's something we have to do on our own to get up there, to go beyond just following instructions, at least a small step. The truth is, that using bad language does more than keep you from being one step above. A person who says bad words, even words that are not that bad but they're still vulgar, actually schleps that person down. The Talmud speaks very harshly about one who speaks in a vulgar way. Although we generally think of speech as just a superficial act, in truth, it has a strong impact on your inner self. The words that leave your mouth make an imprint on your mind and your heart. No matter how high you are, the rope of fine and noble character, a few rotten words can throw a person right back to the ground. You ruined it by just saying this word or that word, and the flip side is also true. A crude person can become more refined if he improves the way he speaks. This is why Shmiras HaLashon, that's the Hebrew word, guarding one's tongue, is considered one of the first steps that need to be taken before correcting more serious character flaws. So, is a choice word after stubbing a toe a horrible sin? Perhaps not. But being careful that all your words that leave your mouth are holy is an important part of living a holy life. I actually met, it was years ago, I met a person who volunteered for the same charity that I'm involved in. And at one particular point, the person startled me and said, well, that was very silly. When the person said that, when the person described something as silly, instead of using the term this was a little salt, that was a little more saltier, it struck me. My new friend never swore. This person never even peppered his speech with profanities the way many of people that I know. It's not that I had a particular, I appreciate it. It was when you see someone under pressure or something doesn't go right, and the way they express it talks about who they are. And it's something important to clean up one's act. It was, to me, seeing this person and react this way was an eye-opener. The person once said, what a greedy person. I found myself, that was so, people say these things, and each time I was, when you see something you don't like and hurtful, there's a temptation to reach out for a crude word. And it made, when you live with people where it's nice, and I also am bothered by the fact that, this is not because about me, but sometimes in front of me, people are careful with the way they speak. If you catch them in the weekend, although another time, Gavald, they let out every word from the Aleph base to the from Franks and officials and everything else. What's going on over here? It's not about me, or front of me. It's our relationship with Hashem and how we see ourselves. So, finding right words to say and not saying the wrong words at tough times is an effort. We don't have to resort to crude phrases or comments. And you look at the person differently. You think of them in a nicer way. If you're careful with the way you speak, people respect you more. So give up swearing and stop using dirty phrases. Never mind in my presence, or it's not about anybody else, it's about yourself. It's not easy. Forcing oneself to look away to accurately describe a situation is much harder than just reaching for some expletive, and as well as a lot more descriptive. So just, with all that's going on and people talking and this one talks and says all kinds of stupid things, we have to appreciate enough. A person must take upon themselves to refuse to swear. To refuse to swear by yourself. You're in the house by yourself. Enough with the SH word. Enough with the other words that people let go, so to speak. If a person thinks more about the way they speak, it evaluates themselves. They become more a person with more precision and more thoughtfulness. A person will find a newfound clarity in elevating their mode of speech. Listen to this, my friends. I flipped out. Researchers have found that about 0.7% of the typical American speech is made up of swear words. You hear? 0.7. That might not sound like a lot, but given that an average person utters 15,000 to 16,000 words each day, that adds up to a whopping 80 to 90 curses. Can you imagine? Saying so many coarse words has an effect on the person over time. Obscenities are called dirty words for a reason. Using them sends a message that we don't care enough about our speech to monitor what we say and choose cleaner options instead. Many of us intuitively realize when we want to seem intelligent and successful, swearing is out of the question. Few people would swear during a job interview or on the first date. In Judaism, important occasions aren't reserved only for special moments. The Torah encourages us to take ourselves seriously and try to grow and reach our potential. Part of that is refining our speech and not allowing degrading expressions to drag us down. In Hebrew language contains few swear words. You can insult someone in Hebrew, but when an Israeli wants to swear, they often import words from other languages. Am I right, Dr. Kolshevsky? The typical swear words that we often hear are from another language, because Hebrew itself has very few languages. The Hebrew language is a living, breathing tongue, but one that really eschews, turns its face away from obscenities. It reflects a key Jewish truth, that what we say matters. The Talmud speaks disapprovingly about people who use crude or vulgar language, but it goes beyond that. In Jewish thought, the way we interact with people and the comments we make shape us. If we speak and act kindly to people, this is a shocker, we become kind. When we talk gently to others, we become gentle. 3,000 years ago, King Solomon wrote, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." Proverbs 18:21. The words we say shape us in both clear and subtle ways. Engaging in crude speech drags down both the speaker and the listener. With vulgarity and swearing such a huge part of everyday speech, maybe it's time to experiment with going obscenity-free. Consider giving up swearing for a week. It might not be easy. It will put a lot of comedians out of business. But the rewards in clarity of thought and a more refined way of communicating are well worth it. Well worth it. Something to think about as we prepare ourselves for the new week ahead of us, which of course I wish everybody only the best as moving forward. Speech and the power of speech as we come to you each and Sunday and all the wonderful programs at the station. The way you speak presents who you are and has, in fact, one of the important differences between an animal, creation of an animal, and a human being is the ability of speech, to be able to speak and speak words. It's a godly. And when I was younger and in the yeshiva, they told us every one of us has a certain amount of words that we speak in the course of our lifetime. And if we talk too much or talk stupidities, we're actually deducting from the final number of words that we have. So we should all be careful to use our words carefully, poignantly and meaningfully, and each word that we say should bring about an important change to ourselves and the world around us, as we learned earlier on, that the reason why Abraham earns the title of the first Jewish person, because it wasn't just about his own piety and his own observance. It was about his ability to care for the world around us. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today and wishing you a wonderful, safe week, physically and spiritually. Sei gesund.